ever feel like, I don't know, like the world's just lost its capacity for like genuine feeling, you know?
Uh-huh.
Like we're all kind of stuck in this loop of irony and cynicism.
Right.
C.S. Lewis, he was onto something with Men Without Chests. That's the chapter you wanted us to deep dive into from his book, The Abolition of Man, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the first chapter and kind of sets the stage for everything else he talks about.
Which is interesting, right? Because he was writing back in the 1940s,
Right.
but what he warned about in education,
Hmm.
it feels, I don't know, eerily relevant today.
It's amazing how timely it still is.
Yeah.
He cuts to the core of like how we form moral judgments, but he does it in a way that's both insightful and kind of playful at the same time. Like he uses this fictional textbook, the Green Book,
Yeah.
to illustrate his point.
Written by the equally fictional Gaius and Titius.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like a sly joke almost. But their approach to teaching, that's where things get really interesting. It's like they're going through and they're systematically dismantling any sense of wonder or emotional response.
Yeah. They take aim at things we traditionally value: patriotism, the beauty of nature, even those feelings you get when you think about, historical
It's
events.
like they want to sanitize everything.
Yes.
Make it all safe and sterile.
And Lewis uses that example of the cruise ship ad. Remember that one?
Vaguely. Refresh my memory.
Okay, so you've got this ad, right? And it's dripping with this enticing language, golden hours, voyages of discovery. They even name drop the explorer Drake.
Oh, right, to evoke a sense of adventure.
Exactly. But Gaius and Titius, they pick it apart. They're showing how the modern cruise experience, it's a pale imitation of Drake's voyages.
Okay, so they're calling out the disconnect between the romanticized image and reality,
Yes.
which, I mean, that makes sense.
Right, but Lewis takes it a step further.
Okay, he argues that by constantly debunking these sentiments, even the ones that are based on, maybe flawed logic, we risk creating what he calls men without chests. Now, that phrase has always, I don't know, it's always struck me as powerful and a little unsettling. What does he really mean by that? Men without chests.
Yeah, he's not being literal, of course.
Okay.
He's talking about the heart,
Okay.
the seat of emotions. Men without chests, they're people who are becoming numb to those deeper feelings. Courage, love, the ability to be moved by beauty, or even make a sacrifice based on principle.
So you're saying that this constant debunking, while, potentially intellectually stimulating, it could come at a cost.
Precisely.
Right.
Think about it. If we train ourselves to only value cold, hard logic, we risk losing something essential to the human experience. I mean, think about art, music, literature.
Right.
Those things, they hit us on an emotional level.
It's like we're becoming immune to the things that make us human in the first place.
Yes. And what's so fascinating is that Lewis argues this isn't just a modern problem. He points to this concept of the Tao, natural law or traditional morality. It's this idea that there are universal, objective values that are found across cultures and throughout history.
And he uses the Tao as a kind of like a measuring stick, right?
Yes.
To show what happens when we stray too far from those core values.
Exactly. And this is where those educators from the Green Book, Gaius and Titius,
Right.
well, they represent something very specific to Lewis. He calls them the innovators.
Because they're trying to innovate in the realm of morality.
Yes. They're attempting to build a new system of values based solely on reason. And this is a big but.
I live for the buts. It's where things get interesting. What's the catch?
The problem, Lewis argues, is that their new system, it has no foundation. It's like they're trying to build a house on sand.
So they're tossing out the very foundation that those values are built upon. It's like saying, yeah, we'll keep compassion, but forget about the inherent dignity of every human being.
That's exactly the paradox that Lewis highlights. He uses this example of, imagine someone arguing for the preservation of society.
Okay.
Which on the surface sounds like a good thing, right?
Okay, absolutely, yeah.
But Lewis is like, okay, but why bother preserving society if you've already rejected the idea that human life has, inherent value?
Right.
If there's no objective good, why not just let everything crumble?
Right. It's like one of those, dystopian novels where survival is,
Yes.
that's the only morality that's left.
Exactly. And that's where Lewis's argument, it takes this chilling turn, I think, because he believes this path, it leads to he calls it the abolition of man. And he doesn't mean that in like a physical sense, like we're going to wipe out humanity, but in a much deeper way, right? He's suggesting that we end up in a world ruled by pure power, you know, stripped of any kind of moral compass.
A world where these men without chests, they're actually the ones in control.
Precisely.
Wow.
And Lewis, he introduces this idea.
It's a scary thought.
It is a scary thought, and I think it's even more scary because he kind of gives a mechanism for how it might happen. He introduces this idea of a small group. He calls them the conditioners.
Okay.
And these are the folks that understand how to manipulate human beings through science, through psychology.
Like?
They control our desires. They control our thoughts, maybe even our deepest feelings.
It's like they're programming humanity to fit their own vision of the future.
Yes, and here's the truly terrifying part, right? These conditioners, they've rejected the Tao themselves, so they're left with no real guiding principles of their own. They're driven by their own kind of arbitrary whims, their own unchecked impulses.
Wow. So instead of a moral order, we have a world shaped by the desires of a select few.
Yes. And Lewis doesn't shy away from how dangerous this is. And he even speculates that the conditioners, they might come to resent the very people that they are conditioning.
Really? Why would that be? That seems counterintuitive.
It is strange, right? But Lewis suggests it might come from a sense of envy.
Okay.
Because the conditioners, in their quest for this ultimate control, right, they've kind of cut themselves off from those deeper human experiences,
right.
The things that give life meaning.
Right.
But the people that they're manipulating, even in their controlled state, still possess some sense of meaning, some connection to those primal emotions.
So it's almost as if the conditioners, like in Abolishing Man,
Yeah.
have also abolished something vital within themselves.
It's this haunting thought, and that brings us to the role of science in all of this, because Lewis, it's important to remember, he's not anti-science by any means.
Is a scholar himself.
Exactly. But he was wary of a science that seeks only to explain away.
Okay.
A science that views humanity as just another cog in a machine.
So instead of seeking understanding, it seeks control.
Yes, and Lewis makes this fascinating comparison. He compares scientists and magicians.
Okay, now that sounds a little out there. What did he mean by that?
So he's arguing that both are driven by a desire for power.
Okay.
But the scientist, armed with the scientific method, has just been far more successful at it.
Interesting. So it's not about, science itself being good or bad, but about the intention behind it.
Precisely. And the danger, as Lewis sees it, is when that intention becomes solely focused on mastery over nature.
Okay.
Including human nature. He was worried that in our quest to conquer and control, we were losing sight of the inherent value and mystery of the world around us.
Like we're so busy, I don't know, like dissecting the frog, that we forget to marvel at his ability to leap.
Yes. And Lewis points to our language as a symptom of this. He talks about how we've started using cold, technical terms to describe these deeply human experiences. Like we talk about liquidating assets, but he's pointing out that we also use it to talk about killing. Right. Or we talk about sales resistance when talking about virtues like thrift and honor.
Wow, yeah, it's like we're trying to sanitize the world, fit it neatly into a spreadsheet.
And in doing so, we lose something essential.
Yeah.
And that's what he meant by the abolition of man. It's this gradual erosion of what makes us human, this reduction of everything to mere matter to be manipulated.
So where does that leave us? Is Lewis suggesting that we abandon science and technology altogether and go back to a simpler time?
No, not at all. Remember, he saw the problem stemming from a specific way of thinking about science, not from science itself.
So is he proposing an alternative?
Yeah.
A different way of approaching science?
He hints at it. He talks about the need for a new natural philosophy, one that's more holistic, more humble, more aware of its own limitations.
A science that doesn't just seek to explain away, but is open to mystery and wonder.
Yes. He even mentions figures like Goethe and Rudolf Steiner, both of whom explored more holistic approaches to science, ways of understanding the world that went beyond pure logic and reason.
So instead of abandoning science, Lewis is urging us to kind of rediscover its soul.
And that, I think, is where the Tao becomes even more relevant. Because Lewis believed that the wisdom of the past, those enduring principles of traditional morality, they can guide us toward a better future. Not by, clinging blindly to the past.
Right.
But by engaging with it critically, creatively.
Yeah. It's like you were saying earlier, like building a a new system of values, but not on a foundation of sand.
Right.
Building it on the solid ground of the Tao.
So it's about finding that balance, honoring the wisdom of the Tao, those time-tested values, but still embracing progress, still embracing innovation. But what about those who just completely reject this whole idea of like an objective moral order?
Right.
The ones who are just like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks to the Tao.
Yeah.
What happens then?
Well, that's where I think Lewis gets really, really provocative, because he argues that trying to exist completely outside of the Tao, it's like stepping into a void. You might think you're free,
right,
but you actually become a slave to your own impulses, your own desires.
Because without that moral compass, right,
Yeah.
those just sentiments, as he calls them, like how do you even differentiate between a want and a genuine need,
Right.
or between like a fleeting whim and a principle that's actually worth, fighting for? Exactly. And Lewis was really skeptical that simply rejecting all traditional morality would, automatically lead to this more enlightened altruist society.
Right.
If anything, he argues that human nature, left unchecked, it doesn't necessarily gravitate towards the good.
So we're back to that dystopian future again. This world that's ruled by the whims of these powerful few, these conditioners. But you said something earlier that I thought was really interesting about Lewis's take on the conditioners. You said they might actually come to resent the very people they're conditioning. Why is that?
It is a chilling thought, isn't it? Because on the surface, you think, well, they have all the power, right?
Right.
Why would they resent the people they're controlling? And Lewis speculates it might come from a place of envy.
Okay.
Because remember, the conditioners, they've severed themselves from the Tao. They've severed themselves from those deeper well springs of human emotion and experience. They are the true men without chests, in a way. But the people that they are manipulating, even in their controlled state, still retain some connection to those core aspects of being human.
Oh, wow. So it's almost like they've traded their humanity for this illusion of control.
Yes. And in doing so, they've created a world where they are, in a sense, the most impoverished beings of all.
Wow.
And Lewis doesn't say this explicitly.
Yeah.
But you could almost argue that he sees the conditioners as the ultimate cautionary tale, right? They are what happens when we allow reason to completely eclipse those deeper, those more intuitive aspects of what it means to be human.
So where does that leave us? What's the takeaway for those of us who, don't want to end up as either, the conditioned or the conditioners?
Well, Lewis, as you've probably noticed, he doesn't offer easy answers. He's not giving us like a step-by-step,
Yeah.
He's more interested in prompting us to ask the right questions. But I think one takeaway is this need to rediscover the wisdom of the Tao, and not as this rigid set of rules, but as a source of guidance.
Like a map, not a cage.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our capacity for reason, for logic, it's only one part of what makes us human, right? Those just sentiments, those seemingly irrational feelings of awe and wonder and love and compassion, those are equally important.
And those are the things that the men without chests, they risk losing.
Precisely. And in a world that's, increasingly dominated by technology, by this constant drive for efficiency and control, I think Lewis's message feels even more urgent,
Yeah.
He's urging us to remember that true progress involves more than just, technological advancement. It requires moral and spiritual growth as well.
So how do we do that? Like how do we reclaim those just sentiments, those deeper aspects of ourselves in a world that often seems to value them so little?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But I think it starts with recognizing the limitations of our own understanding, acknowledging that there's more to the world than what we can quantify and control. It's about, nurturing our capacity for wonder, for empathy, for those moments of genuine connection that transcend the purely rational.
Yeah.
It's about, looking for those glimmers of the Tao in our own lives and having the courage to follow them even when they lead us off the beaten path.
It's about remembering that we are more than just, thinking machines.
Yes.
We're feeling beings as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that capacity for feeling, for deep, meaningful connection that ultimately makes us human.
Beautifully put. And as we navigate the complexities of our modern world, that's a truth worth remembering.
Couldn't agree more. So to our listener out there, the one who brought us this incredible piece of writing, we'll leave you with with this final thought from C.S. Lewis. We make men without chests and expect of them virtue and enterprise. We laugh at honor and are shocked to find traitors in our midst. Let that simmer for a bit and see where it takes you. This has been a fascinating deep dive. Thanks for coming along for the ride.